Welcome to Capital Class. I'm Adam Geary. We founded Capital Class to share candid conversations with market-leading businesses while humanizing the journey of constructing an enterprise. In 1995, feeling a little old, I remember crowding around a neighbor's television, watching the 49ers play the Chargers. This was an event unlike any I had experienced. It was a day. It was a country gathered to watch two teams pursue a national championship. It was the Super Bowl. This event is a business unto itself, sprouting almost out of the ground, creating millions of dollars of economic impact. 25 years later, as a member of the Super Bowl Legacy Committee, I had a glimpse into the design, build, and implementation of this enterprise. In today's class, we ask the question, what does it take to host a Super Bowl? How does a city prepare for a national event during the COVID era? And what lessons can be learned from adapting under a fluid situation, such as a pandemic? To answer these questions, we are joined by our guest, Claire Lessinger, Vice President of the Tampa Bay Sports Commission, and as I came to know her, Chief Operating Officer of Super Bowl 55. We pose these questions and many more in today's episode of Capital Class. We hope you enjoy. All right. Today's class, we are joined by Claire Lessinger, Vice President of Events at the Tampa Bay Sports Commission, accomplished D1 volleyball player, recognized as one of the most influential people in Tampa Bay sports by the Tampa Bay Times, and as I know her, the COO of the Super Bowl 55. Claire, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Claire, we started Capital Class to really explore the journey of building an enterprise. And when I look at our time together, few people build a business, a multi-million-dollar business with national recognition, a la the Super Bowl in their career. And I, as a member supporting the host committee and, being a part of the Forever 55 Legacy Initiative, I really was impressed with how that came together. And so firstly, kudos, congratulations. Also, congratulations for basically making the Tampa Bay Bucks win.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take all the credit.
Never hedged. But I think
never talked it into complete existence. We appreciate the Bucks, following through.
Absolutely. And I think when I, to kind of capture today's conversation, to build an enterprise under regular terms is hard enough. To do it under a pandemic is unbelievable. And I think to host an event at the Super Bowl under the terms and conditions you did is almost unfathomable. So can you take us through a little bit, like what does it mean to host a Super Bowl? How does this even happen?
Sure. It starts with the host community. And we are very experienced in hosting major events. Our organization, the Tampa Bay Sports Commission, that really helps. We're like the engine behind bidding on these major events. And then, of course, we partner with the Bucks and TSA and whoever the venue partner is and whoever, the sport entity partner is and helping win the business to host these major events. But this was our 5th time hosting a Super Bowl. So it's not about winning it, it's about winning it back. And when we win it back, we know that our community, again, has been great partners of the NFL time after time after time. And now we have the opportunity to not only get it back, but to showcase the growth and the development and all that's gone on in Tampa since the last time we hosted. And I think that's another thing that makes us unique. We have this ongoing growth and development in our downtown corridor. The region itself has been booming. And so every time guests, fans come back to this region, they're experiencing the same greatness they did the time before, but something also very different. So we have a lot of assets to sell, but then we also have our people, and our people are the game changers. And that goes for everyone in this community, from the community leaders and the public to the private sector. The amount of support that just rallies around, bringing these from our mayor to our governor, like Florida Sports Foundation, driving these major events to our state and to our community is a priority. And then the level of support that is truly, extended is just unbelievable. So I'll start in terms of like how clearly we bid on and won the opportunity. We actually, by default, won the opportunity to host this year because LA's construction wasn't tracking. But our host committee itself, and this is another thing that I think separates our destination and our hosting efforts maybe from some of our competitors, is compiled predominantly by the Tampa Bay Sports Commission staff. So the nonprofit organization that is helping spearhead the bidding effort, in partnership, of course, with the Bucks and TSA and other key partners, is the same group. The same group that put the bid together, made all the promises, is going to be the same group that delivers and maintains all of those relationships with the NFL from start to finish. Many other cities do build up, tear down models. So once they win that bid, once they win the opportunity to host a Super Bowl, their Super Bowl host committee is a build up, tear down model of all new folks. Some come in from out of market, some probably are still within market. But there's a bit of disconnect. There's, the communication and the relationship building then has to start over. The handover of the bid then has to be relearned. You have to then research what you promised and make sure you deliver. So there's so much continuity, consistency, and then the strength of the relationships that we maintain from start to finish with these bid opportunities. So I think when we look at this Super Bowl and then you take a pandemic year, the way Tampa Bay hosts major events, the way that we structure our host committees really played in our favor. Because again, we were working with tried and true partners with the NFL, with the Bucks, with TSA, with Visit Tampa Bay, with the city, with the county, you name it, all of our same partners that are in the trenches with us on every one of these major event hosting efforts. And so you've got this teamwork mentality. Everyone's rolling their sleeves up and making sure that it's the best ever. And I know for us, one of our priorities, we'll get into this a little later too, probably, but one of our priorities that we knew wouldn't change. There was a lot that changed throughout the month of planning, and a lot of pausing, a lot of pivoting.
I remember the
exactly. One thing we knew wouldn't change is the relationship with the NFL and the opportunity to strengthen that and be the best partners we could possibly be. And we know that was fulfilled, and it's so rewarding to both of us. I think both organizations in this partnership to be able to talk about the successes that were.
Fascinating. So take me back a step here. Clearly, it's different than the Olympics model, right? The build up, tear down, which I was unfamiliar. That's how Super Bowls in some cities worked. This is my first host committee, right? So I have not done it before. You find out that LA can't host or won't be able to host, right? Because at that point, that was more of a structural issue. They weren't to be built.
Right.
What's that situation like? I mean, is it a call? Hey, we need to put Super Bowl 55 somewhere in the United States, and the major cities just put their names in the hat?
So I'll be candid. I wasn't at the table for all of these decisions that were made, but I know enough to be able to share a little bit about the process. So Tampa Bay was a finalist in that bid cycle process when LA was awarded. So we had already gone through and were, had a delegation that pitched to the owners, and we're a finalist. So the owners and all of the group that voted for where those Super Bowls went the next 3 to 4 years had seen what Tampa Bay's bid pitch was all about, what we were capable of doing. We had an incredible presentation, and we just fell short in that bid process. So I think when LA wasn't tracking, I think it was a no-brainer. And quite honestly, the owners voted unanimously to award Tampa without going back through a bid process. So I think that speaks volumes. And not to mention our window was way shorter. You usually have X amount of years once you're awarded to start prepping, planning, fundraising, start, putting your host committee and your subcommittees together. Our window was shrunk quite a bit because we were handed off the opportunity to host midway through a hosting effort. But I think that speaks volumes, again, to the relationship with the NFL, the trust that the owners had in our community. And so that's how it landed in Tampa's lap, and we're forever grateful.
That's incredible. When we were having our meetings and the host committee was gathering in July and August, there was a question then of like, would there even be fans, right? What would a fan experience be? When will we be rolled out as, the committee itself? Obviously we know the end of the story, right? You hosted a successful non-super spreader event
Right.
in the city with a lot of success in the community engagement, right? The community felt extremely alive, and I can testify to that. What are some of the things we just didn't know about, right? I mean, I'll even take a real, clear question here. The halftime performance. I've been to that stadium. How did they build that? Like what? I mean, just incredible change to the stadium to make a halftime show. Give us some kind of behind the scenes here. Like what were some curveballs that you absolutely just hit out of the park?
Sure. I think, to answer that really broadly, I don't think anyone truly understands all that goes into every decision that's being made, right? To let people behind the green curtain in terms of the amount of time, effort, energy, as well as resources that were used to make every decision during this pandemic year. And of course, there was a lot of pause, and a lot of pause because that time, effort, and energy was so important to make sure we got it right. And so that was fascinating for me to be a part of. And when I speak of this, of course, health and safety protocol being the absolute priority, the driver behind every decision that was being made. So you mentioned, we didn't know if we were going to have fans, but we had to wait to see if the season kicked off, when the season kicked off. What markets were going to go with fans. The Bucks didn't start with fans, then they went to fans. So now we're being able to litmus test in our own community, and of course the Super Bowl hosting venue with fans. So all of it was progressive because we had hoped that with each step towards a positive direction that it would maintain that path, but we didn't know, right? Course could change. That's what the past 15 months have taught all of us. So it was about commitment and patience. If I had to come up with two words, the amount of folks that were committed to one, making this the safest, most inspiring Super Bowl, but also, in the records books as a success, was unbelievable. But the amount of patience that it took, and I think that's probably what tried all of us the most, especially for me, who I'm wired, I'm an event planner. We want the details to be done well in advance. And so everything being last minute and truly just having to trust the process, and that, like, the longer we wait, the better we'll be. But the time in which we're waiting, we need to be spending on making sure every detail is buttoned up from a health and safety protocol. So I'll just give you a little example. And the NFL, this is, again, like being partnering with them during this time on this event was such a privilege. The amount of additional work streams that they created internally was mind-blowing. The event preparedness guidelines and the stadium preparedness guidelines they created and presented, of course, with sign-off from CDC and all of their health professionals and officials and doctors. And then, that would trickle down to our local state government officials and health officials. So these layers and layers of nothing getting approved until we had IDER plans in place, which were infectious disease emergency response plans, that then, of course, had to have infectious disease response officers that helped, track the success of the implementation of these plans. So there was no event, there was no ancillary event, Super Bowl experience. Now, a lot of ancillary events, of course, were postponed or moved to virtual platforms, but the ones that did take place, the layers and layers and layers of meetings and approvals that took place for us to say, we feel confident that we can push play on this and it will be safe and it will be successful, was really, I don't think anyone, and I was in the trenches every step of the way. It was a mind-blowing experience. It was so rewarding. Anyone will really understand what went into that.
72 hours out. Tell me about a situation that just popped up and you guys absolutely resolved it.
Oh my goodness, that's so hard. I feel like that becomes kind of our full-time job during event week. I think it's, and again, with event week is very much a blur. It goes so fast. Sadly, I am always holding on to every moment because that's what's so exciting to see it come to life. But I think if anything, here's a great example. So, and this is kudos again to our leadership and our mayor. We're on daily calls every morning with the NFL. And we're talking through every work stream, every department. They're providing updates. And of course, a lot of weigh-in from public safety and health and safety protocol officials. But our mayor implementing a mask mandate event week was huge. So what we were able to do and what Super Bowl Experience's 10-day run gave us, it opened, and this is non-traditional, it opened the weekend before Super Bowl week. So we had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday to really start to gauge how our community was going to come out in support of this event. We weren't surprised by the results. Of course, the weather was amazing. And this was the first, public gathering live event that had taken place in months. So when we started to gauge what the capacity was looking like at Julian B. Lane and the capacity was looking like at Curtis Hickson Park, there were ongoing, nonstop pivots and changes being made to the plan that we had launched initially. And so one of the things that we noticed is at Super Bowl Experience, which was way more experiential, there was a lot of things to do there. The mask mandate was very easy to enforce. And they had staff that was actually hired to do that. And some of the other parks, because they were more food and beverage heavy, it was much tougher to enforce the mask mandate. So we were making shifts to the amount of staff that were being, hired and in place at each one of these parks. And then what the mayor's order did is it allowed that mandate to extend to the Riverwalk, where we were seeing a lot of enforcement fall off. People would come in the parks, but then they'd hit the Riverwalk and then the mask would come off. So again, health safety protocol being the priority, the decision maker driver at every turn, we were still making those decisions event week to ensure that this was not a super spreader event. So again, hats off to the team and our mayor and the leadership that was just always so supportive every step of the way and doing what was right.
Mission accomplished, without question. We talk often about the pandemic in a negative light, right? For the obvious,
right.
Substantial change to the world that we live in, incredible loss of life. But there are opportunities in those moments. When you think about Super Bowls, you've done now a couple, and we've hosted. What's a positive impact that you think COVID will have on the Super Bowl experience?
And it's a really easy question, quite honestly. It's COVID in the way that it challenged the way this event normally takes place, repositioned. It was always there, but it repositioned a lot of emphasis and highlight on social initiatives and social impact. And so talked about the relationship with the NFL. We knew that wouldn't change. That was an opportunity for us, again, to build such a trusted partnership with them from start to finish. What we also knew wouldn't change would be the $2 million investment back into our community as part of our legacy program, which was Forever 55. $1 million raised by the host committee, $1 million matched by the NFL Foundation. And so how those dollars were spent, the pillars and the way that they were identified and then executed was so thoughtful and strategic, but also relevant. It was about what the needs are in our community at this time. And although the pillars were created prior to the pandemic, we also shifted focus and added a pillar based off the pandemic. So systemic justice was an added pillar to our legacy program based off all of the challenges and the issues that became prevalent, have always been there again, but at the forefront of what was a real issue in our world, in our in our country, and of course in our community. So again, shifting our emphasis, shifting our dollars, making sure the impact was unbelievable, quite honestly. And these dollars went into programs. They weren't into bricks and mortar. They weren't into staffing. They were into programs so that they can sustain themselves over time. The impact of Forever 55 will truly be felt forever in our community because of the way we invested those dollars. Now, that's one huge example of how I think, COVID had a positive impact on this Super Bowl. But I will also say, and again, just incredible hats off and kudos to the NFL in terms of how they repositioned so many things throughout their planning journey. And I said at the top of this, it was one of the most inspiring Super Bowls because of that. The opportunity to bring healthcare workers into the stadium was unbelievable. Double vaccinated, that process, like that's a whole nother podcast to talk through how that was implemented and the process in which we were able to pull that off. But through that increased capacity, but it also allowed these frontline workers that truly needed to be celebrated and be given this incredible opportunity to attend a once in a lifetime event, be honored and recognized on that stage and in our community was fabulous. And I could go on and on and on about how inspiring the Super Bowl was and how much emphasis was put on ensuring that it was. I'll wrap this real quick in that I was on a post-event call with NFL Green. So NFL Green is the Super Bowl's sustainability partner. And this year they had the most partners engaged, the most partners invested. And I was on a call with one of their corporate partners that said, due to the pandemic, normally their dollars would go into ancillary events, into the glitz, the glamour, and the celeb of the Super Bowl. But they invested predominantly a lot of their dollars into the social impact and to NFL Green. And it was so rewarding. And they think it will change their model moving forward in terms of how those dollars get invested. So that's a perfect example of, everyone was pivoting. Everyone was trying to figure out, this isn't the norm. What do we do here? Where do we invest? Where do we put our brand? Where do we put our dollars? And it was really powerful.
One of the key pieces of leadership, and what I've heard throughout most of this interview today, is you have to have a year, maybe a process for making big decisions, right? And it's obvious, especially in the event planning world, for those of us who've done it, much of that made with very limited information. And so can you talk us a little bit, how do you make big decisions? How do you process those types of scenarios?
I mean, that's a great question. I think, I personally, I'll say me personally, and then we as I represent our organization, am surrounded by great leaders. And so we have an incredible culture. The Sports Commission is a team of 8 full-time employees. Our host committee became then a team of 12, which is still tiny in the grand scheme of things, and small but mighty. We wear a ton of different hats, and the level of communication that we rely on and support of one another is truly what develops a culture. And so I would say there's no decision, big decision that I'm making by myself. And I think that's important. I think, it needs to, when you've got big decisions in terms of what we're doing and bringing these major events to the community and how it's impacting our community, there needs to be a team behind those decisions and making sure that they're being vetted and looked at every different angle. And so our team relies on each other heavily, and we also rely heavily on whether it's our host committee boards or other community leaders that are experts in whatever space and decision we're making. So it took a village. Clearly we have to make some big decisions on the fly, and they may fall right into our lane of area of expertise, and we're just comfortable and confident in doing that. But I tend, I think clearly leading with your head is important. You need to make intellectual decisions and not reactionary decisions. But I also lead a lot with my heart, and when decisions feel right, they're right for the community, and you're thinking of others first. They tend to be the right decision, and our organization thinks that way too. It's always about the partner. It's always about the community. And that's what drives our decision making.
Incredible. So, I think it's important for listeners to understand that there is what I've heard from you today is a very qualitative approach, right? That it's got to feel right. And I was struck by your emphasis on women leadership, right? The kind of advancement of female leadership in the sports arena, advancement of women in leadership for your, I wouldn't say alma mater, but USF, kind of your local partnership institution. You obviously have a lot of demands on your time, right? How do you make that decision to invest in those organizations, and why?
Um, it's it's really about passion for me. I think we all get asked to support and participate in many things, and I tend um, to not say no well, and one because I I love giving back. I think that's really important. And I just recently heard a panel about when you're given the opportunity to be elevated, whether it's in your organization or some other way, or given more opportunity, what that's truly giving you is more opportunity to invest in others. The further you go up any ladder means you need to be investing more in others. And so I'm so grateful. My journey, started in coaching, but I've had so many men and women that have impacted and influenced one, whether it was my decision making or just me personally and professionally. And I'm committed to doing the same. And for me, my passion is about influencing that next generation of women. I think it's really, really important. And so my two sororities here locally are WISE Tampa Bay and Women WLP at USF, Women Leadership and Philanthropy. And one, why I love those organizations, but two, why I think they're so important is that, yes, it's a group of like-minded individuals, right? Of course, women's sports and events is right in my wheelhouse. But it's community leaders all the way down to students. It's C-suite down to, entry level, just entering the market. And I learn from all of them. The future generation of leaders, I may even learn more from these days. So it gives me the opportunity to give back and help share and hopefully be a resource to many. But it's also helping me grow as an individual and as a professional. And I just love being surrounded by people that are so driven and still invested in educating themselves and giving back to the community. It's such a positively contagious environment. And I just, my goal is to play a part in that.
There's definitely something to be said about having a community of your own, right? Your own group of peers and also folks that will stretch you. And I can certainly attest to that with my own experience. But I think we're in a time here, Claire, where women leadership it's no longer we'll get around to it thing, right? Over time, it'll happen. Right. There's no more conversations about, or there's fewer conversations about like one day the glass ceiling will change, right? These are things that are happening, right? We're watching it. How does that make you feel?
I mean, I have a lot of pride for that. And that, like, again, I hope I can play a small role in helping elevate women, not just within our own organization, not just within our own community, but across the globe, and whatever I can do to assist in that is a priority and is important to me. But to your point, we've come a long way. We hear this all the time. We have a long way to go. And so it's about maintaining invested in that journey. And I think what's encouraging is you are seeing a lot of positive shift and change in this. And I think it's because the conversation is, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes negative things happening that go viral that, again, recreate the conversation and bring it up to the forefront and make it a priority. But every time that happens, I feel like we make big strides. And so it's like anything else. There's a lot of fights out there, but as long as we continue to fight the good fight, progress and change will continue to happen.
Love it. Claire, let me get you out of here on this. Big predictions. All right. We end every show this way.
All right.
Will the Bucks repeat?
Yes.
All right. Will Tampa host another Super Bowl, and when?
Yes, and I don't know.
Oh, come on. Make a call, Claire.
I know. I really don't know. Hopefully sooner than later. That was our whole goal. And again, strengthening that partnership with the NFL. We hope that we get it back sooner than later, but I have nothing to do with those decisions.
And our last, if you had to give the Claire Roach, which is an award named after yourself, if you had to give the Claire Roach Defensive Award to any member of your team, who would it be? And you got to pick someone. Give a shout out.
Oh my gosh, defensive.
Who played a big role here? Maybe an unsung hero. I mean, I met many of them. Honestly, as a member of the committee, it was quite easy, right? Your staff was everywhere.
We were, man, that is hard. Oh my gosh.
You can give two. Give two shout outs.
Okay. And this isn't because I'm kissing up, but I am going to give Rob Higgins an award.
Fair.
Unbelievable. I mean, again, if anyone was let behind the green curtain to see how that guy worked and managed every step of the way, he is a sleeve roller upper. He is not managing from 30,000 feet. And so I just, admire and respect everything about him, but it was incredible to watch him work during the Super Bowl. And then I think my other one is going to go to our creative specialist. So Cody Liner, again, a guy behind the scenes that was charged with, if you saw the amount of digital and social creative that was asked for him to turn around in milliseconds as it got down to the wire, and maintaining and keeping our story, whether it was social, again, digital, web, relevant, was mind-blowing. You go back and you follow our Tampa Bay LV accounts building up to Super Bowl week, and the amount of content that was out there. And again, a lot of that creative he was creating in-house as well. Just an incredible teammate, again, that probably would go unrecognized otherwise. But a huge piece to Tampa Bay storytelling.
Well, Claire, I want to personally say thank you for having me as a member of the Legacy Committee and supporting the host committee. And it was an incredible honor. And you earned my award, Claire, because it was an absolutely incredible experience to watch you under center, if you will, calling the plays and throwing the ball and making it happen. So, Claire, thank you so much for joining Capital Class. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time together.
And Adam, thank you. And thanks for your servant leadership. Quite honestly, that subcommittee in early learning has, I told Diane this the other day, Diane Jacob, I am so in awe at what that committee has created and launching and piloting a first 1,000-day initiative in our community. And you had so much to do with that. And again, that's what separates our community from others, is community leaders like yourself that come in, roll their sleeves up and want to be part of this and want to help us impact our community and on the grandest of stages. So thank you. Kudos to you. Kudos to everyone. Again, takes a village.
Thanks again, Claire. And thank you for joining Capital Class. Again, Claire Lessinger, Vice President of the Tampa Bay Sports Commission and Chief Operating Officer of Super Bowl 55. Thank you for listening in on our third class with Claire Lessinger. As a member of the Super Bowl 55 Legacy Committee, I witnessed the power of Claire's servant leadership and flexibility. Today's lessons highlight the power of embracing the likely unknowns to create control from chaos. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have an idea for our next class, please email me directly at adam.giery@gmail.com. You've been listening to Capital Class, a venture with the Strategist Podcast Network. Learn more at www.strategistgroup.com. I'm Adam Geary. Class is closed.